40,000 years ago, in a cave lit only by flickering firelight, two different kinds of humans met face to face. One was us, Homo sapiens, newly arrived from Africa, with tools and dreams and painted stories on stone. The other was stronger, with a barrel chest and heavy brow, shaped by 300,000 years of ice and survival. These were the Neanderthals, our closest relatives, and for a brief moment in time, we shared this ancient world together. What if that meeting had gone differently, and they were still walking among us today, their DNA unchanged, not just another species, but another kind of human entirely, with their own thoughts and ways of seeing? The mystery isn't how they lived, but why they vanished, leaving only bones and stone tools as whispers. Who were these lost cousins, and what can their silence teach us about our own fragile existence? The story begins 300,000 years ago, when Europe was a land of endless winter and wandering giants. Ice sheets 2 miles thick pressed down upon the earth, grinding mountains into valleys with patient force. Between these walls of ice, in pockets of tundra and forest, the Neanderthals learned to survive and thrive. They were built for this harsh world, their bodies compact and powerful, conserving heat like living furnaces. Their bones were dense as stone, their muscles wrapped thick around frames that could wrestle cave bears. But look closer at those ancient skulls, and you'll find something remarkable hidden within the bone itself. Their brains were actually larger than ours, filling skull cases that archaeologists once thought meant only brutishness. These were not the savage brutes of old imagination, but beings who buried their dead with flowers. In Shanidar Cave in Iraq, pollen grains tell us they laid their loved ones down on beds of wild flowers. Have you ever wondered what thoughts filled those larger brains as they gazed at the same stars we see? They made jewelry from eagle talons, painted their bodies with red ochre, and left handprints on cave walls. At the Rock of Gibraltar, they carved abstract patterns that speak of minds reaching for meaning and beauty. They hunted mammoths with spears they crafted by hand, each point shaped with the knowledge passed through generations. Fire was their greatest tool, keeping the ice at bay through nights that lasted half the year. Around those fires, did they tell stories, sing songs, or simply sit in silence watching shadows dance? The evidence suggests they cared for their injured and elderly, feeding those who could no longer hunt alone. One skeleton from France shows a man who lived for years with a withered arm, supported by his clan. This wasn't just survival of the fittest, but something more profound, the birth of compassion in the human lineage. They knew the migration patterns of reindeer, the flowering times of plants, the secrets of their frozen world. For 200,000 years, they were the undisputed masters of Europe. From Spain to Siberia's edge, generation after generation passed down the knowledge of stone and fire, hunt and home, season and star. Then, 40,000 years ago, everything changed when our ancestors arrived from the warming south with new ideas. We came with throwing spears and sewing needles, with art that captured movement and stories painted in ochre. The Neanderthals watched from forest edges as these strangers spread across lands. Their ancestors had always known. At first, the two human species kept their distance, each following their own paths through the ancient landscape. But the archaeological record tells us something extraordinary. In certain caves, their tools lie mixed together like memories. They met, they traded, and most remarkably of all, they loved, leaving traces in our very blood today. Every person of European or Asian descent carries within them 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. An ancient gift. What did those first hybrid children look like, carrying the heritage of two different human worlds within them? Did they have their Neanderthal parents' strength and their sapiens parents' voice for complex speech and song? The genetic evidence reveals these meetings weren't rare accidents, but happened again and again across millennia. Yet even as they shared genes and perhaps affection, the Neanderthals were slowly retreating to remote refuges. Climate was changing. warming and cooling in violent swings that shattered their carefully balanced world of ice. The great herds they had hunted for millennia were moving, dying, transforming into something unrecognizable and strange. Our ancestors brought more than genes. They brought competition for caves, for game, for the best territories. With our throwing spears, we could kill from a distance while Neanderthals had to close with dangerous prey. We hunted in larger groups, shared information across vast networks, adapted faster to each changing season. The Neanderthals' last strongholds were in Gibraltar, in Croatia's mountains, in caves along the Black Sea coast. Can you imagine being among the last of your kind, watching your world shrink with each passing winter? In Gibraltar's caves, they held on until 28,000 years ago, the final flicker of their ancient flame. Some scientists believe disease played a role, plagues brought from Africa for which they had no immunity. Others point to their smaller groups, isolated from each other, unable to share innovations quickly enough. What if the difference wasn't superiority but simple mathematics? We outnumbered them 10 to 1. The truth is probably all of these factors combined. A perfect storm that ended 300,000 years. They didn't vanish in some great catastrophe but faded slowly, canyon by canyon, winter by winter. The last Neanderthal may have died alone or surrounded by hybrid children who carried on their legacy. In Spain's El Sidrón cave, we found a family group. 3 women, 3 men, 3 teenagers, 3 children. They were killed together, their bones bearing cut marks that tell a darker story of conflict and desperation. But even in death, they reveal their humanity. The children's teeth show they were nursed when sick. One young girl had been fed medicinal plants, bitter herbs that someone who loved her made her swallow. These weren't just biological machines trying to survive, but people with relationships, with care, with something like love. The men all shared the same mitochondrial DNA, suggesting they stayed with their birth clan throughout their lives. The women came from different genetic lineages, meaning they left their families to join new groups through partnership. This is a social structure we recognize, a pattern of kinship that echoes through time to today. In another cave, we found a Neanderthal child's footprints, preserved in hardened mud for 30,000 years. Those small prints lead to nowhere, a moment frozen in stone when a young one explored their world. Did their parent call them back from danger, the way we call our own children from the edge? The Neanderthals made glue from birch bark, a complex process requiring precise temperature control and patience. They created the world's first synthetic material, transforming nature into something entirely new through fire and knowledge. This wasn't the work of simple minds, but of innovators solving problems with elegant, repeatable solutions. In Germany's Schänningen site, they crafted wooden spears so perfectly balanced they could be thrown like javelins. These weapons are 300,000 years old, older than our species, yet designed with mathematical precision. What other inventions did they make from materials that couldn't survive the grinding teeth of time? Their vocal anatomy was slightly different from ours, but new studies suggest they could speak, could sing. What stories did they tell around those ancient fires? What names did they give the stars above? In Israel's Kebara cave, we found a Neanderthal burial so deliberate it speaks of ritual and belief. The body was laid carefully on its back, the skull removed after death for reasons we'll never understand. Perhaps they believed the head held the soul, or perhaps this was their way of keeping memory close. Today, we carry their genes within us, a gift across species that shapes our immune systems and metabolism. The genes they gave us help us fight diseases, process fats, and survive at high altitudes today. In Tibet, the gene that lets people thrive in thin air came from an ancient mating with Denisovan's cousins. We are not purely Homo sapiens, but a mixture, carrying within us the legacy of those we replaced. Every time you fight off a cold, you might be using defenses inherited from a Neanderthal ancestor. They are not truly extinct, but transformed, living on in billions of humans walking the earth today. In museums now, we stare at their reconstructed faces, so human yet subtly different from our own. Artists give them eyes that seem to hold intelligence and sadness, though we can't know what they truly felt. Were they capable of abstract thought, of wondering about their place in the cosmos as we do? The newest evidence suggests they were. That consciousness like ours flickered behind those heavy brow ridges. How do you mourn the loss of another human species, especially one that helped make us who we are? Their stone tools lie in museum drawers, each one shaped by hands that knew love, loss, and longing. In Croatia, archaeologists found a Neanderthal who had been eaten by his own kind in desperate times. Even this dark evidence speaks to their humanity. We'd have done terrible things. When survival demanded it, the world they knew is gone forever. The mammoth steppes replaced by forests, cities, and farms. If they could see what we've done with the world they left us, would they recognize it at all? We search for them in our genes, in buried caves, in stone tools scattered across 3 continents. Each discovery adds another piece to a puzzle that will never be complete. A story half told in stone. They were here for 15 times longer than our civilization has existed. Masters of a world now vanished. What will remain of us in 40,000 years? And will anyone be there to wonder who we were? The Neanderthals remind us that even humanity itself is not permanent, that we too are part of nature's experiment. They were not our ancestors but our cousins, fellow travelers who took a different path through time. In the end, they are us and we are them, bound together by DNA and by the shared experience of being human. Listen carefully to your heartbeat tonight, and know that within it echoes the pulse of another kind of human forever.